Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights. This is episode number 292 and a request to all our viewers, whether you are watching it on Facebook or on YouTube, please do like this program so it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Friday, December the 10th, and here are the main points. The untimely death of India's Chief of Defense Staff, General Bipin Rawat, with his wife and 11 other military personnel accompanying him, has sent shockwaves across the world in a helicopter accident. Prime Minister Modi and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and other key personnel pay homage to the general. Let's welcome our co-host Sree. Sree, namaskar, and a quick thought on whether you have known him and in your inputs on this, sir.
Good morning to everybody. Welcome to the DG edition 292. Look forward to another great day. And wherever you are, good morning from New York and good day to all other people. I don't know him personally, never met him or never spoken with him. But it's very clear that he seems to have a commanding respect from many, many nations and people around the world. I think that he conducted himself with dignity and, valor, and his perspectives around what he needed to do. Clearly in US, the US Armed Services have a huge respect to him. I think he's also trained in the US Academy. So therefore, at least in the United States, from a US perspective, the US Armed Forces have huge respect for General Bipin Rawat. Very untimely. I think we need to wait and see what unravels by way of the investigations that will definitely, most certainly happen. It's not just 12 people, but it's the first CDS for India. So I gather that they have recovered the important black box, and they should be able to now at least get closer to the truth as far as possible.
Let's hope so. And the current Chief of Army, General Naravane, is expected to be the next CDS, and we extend our best wishes to him. And Sridharji, US sanctions on Iran will have no bearing on the Jawahar port project, says the Indian government. Sridharji, on what basis do you think India is making this claim?
Well, I think if you recall, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with the statement that India has taken a position. But apparently in the days prior, they had indicated the strategic importance of the port as it relates to the security of Afghanistan, as it relates to the supply lines and important projects that India was involved with, plus potentially an economic corridor for the Afghan people. But remember, these are all done when Afghan was Afghanistan, and there was attempted normalization of activities in Afghanistan. I think that's been going on for 2 decades. But today it is run by Taliban. And India has lots of challenges in terms of what it can do and what it wants to do. So the question for India to say that the Iran sanctions will have no bearing, I don't know. I mean, it remains to be seen on ground what is the reality that is likely to happen. But we discussed this in one of the DGIs, and including in my solo DGI, we discussed this trans-Iranian network and the importance of Jawahar and that specific linkage to the trans-Iranian network from an economic perspective. But if Iran continues to be belligerent on its nuclear issue, then I think it's going to create problems for a number of nations, and India is no exception.
An Indian government to provide incentives worth 76,000 crores to semiconductor firms to make India a semiconductor hub. Sridharji, in the past, we have mentioned about the plan of TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Corporation, of wanting to establish a hub in India along with Japan and United States. Is there any other company also that's interested in establishing a semiconductor plant here, sir?
I think, as you rightly said, TSMC plant is contemplated in Bombay, if I'm correct. There's something that is planned in UP as well. I think Tata's had expressed interest
Correct.
in establishing two plants. With, I think it's, if I'm right, $200 million each, fabs. I know that the Japanese Sanyo had expressed interest in setting it up. I won't be surprised if even Intel expresses a desire to do something in India. These are some of these names that are flying in the periphery, but I have not heard anything which is very tangible to say so and so has made an application and there is an imminent approval in the pipeline.
And Northeast to become a rubber production hub as the Indian government plans rubber plantations on 200,000 hectares of land in the region. Indian government commences planning 79 hydroelectric projects for over 30,000 megawatts to meet the 2030 clean energy targets. Siddharji, this is all excellent news. These are all new untapped areas that India is probably trying to get into. And I think it augurs well that India will be able to, feed its energy using clean energy, sir.
Well, I think if you recall again, the COP26 summit, as well as subsequent to that, when we were covering the topic in DGI, we had made it very clear there was only one nation in the world which had a plan. Everybody had a desire, and everybody was great to announce an end state target that includes our great country, United States. But we did not come up with a tangible transition plan. And we saw that in the United States, we are suffering a significant crisis on the energy side of the business. So India has been augmenting its renewable sources of energy, and you have seen that it is the leader in the solar. Now they are demonstrating that they also have, this new program that they are embarking on, which actually not only augments its capacity, substitutes the capacity from the traditional, but moves the needle by way of its obligations that it has committed to meet on the climate front.
And India vaccinates over 1.35 billion doses with 812 million single doses and 503 million fully vaccinated. And Biden calls for the fight for democracy, defining challenge for the world as nations begin to align, as is reminiscent of Cold War times. Siddharji, this raises an important question. Now there is, this kind of, create noise one place, act somewhere else. This has become the new playbook of many countries. And Russia is, they tried to create the diversion in Belarus, and they were preparing to invade Ukraine, which is what we had observed a few DGIs ago. Now, what has changed since then? I mean, we know that Biden and Putin had an online meeting where Biden kind of read him the Riot Act. What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, I think if history and is any precedents with regard to the Russia-Biden discussions, every time there's a discussion, there's a perception, but Vladimir Putin comes on top. He gets away with what he has his intended agenda is. He's getting enough political mileage and enough political coverage by way of his brinkmanship. So therefore, Biden can threaten as much as he wants. I'll make punitive actions, I'll force sanctions, I'll do this, I'll do that. The question is that will Vladimir Putin listen, or will he work out some deal with the Ukrainian prime minister, Ukrainian president? So the question, therefore, is that this rhetoric that Biden is making or the propaganda or the perceived propaganda that he was very tough and very strong, etc. It will not hold water, and you're going to see the Russian way. Already, media are saying that Russia has won, notwithstanding the publicity that Biden has got out of it.
Well, this media narrative, fakeness has now taken a life of its own. So, it is up to independent news sites such as PGurus to give you the truth. So, once again, viewers, if you have not already liked this program, please like it. And if you're watching it from Facebook, please like it there too. Facebook is also aggressively promoting its videos now. White House calls for other options if diplomacy fails in Iran. Sree, this whole thing to me seems like after Biden came to power, it was the Democrats and the Biden administration which reached out to Iran saying that we will lift the sanctions. Should it not have been the other way around?
Yes, I think we covered this again. There's always a set of groups that has been sympathetic and supportive to the cause of Biden. So there are the pro-Iranian regime groups, which probably helped. And so therefore, what you're seeing is the advocacy coming out of it. I think, again, we touched using exactly the same words. But what you're seeing here is basically redoing and resetting the deal that Obama did in 2000, President Obama did in 2015. So the goal here seems to be, how to resurrect all those kinds of things and retrofit and justify, which prompted United States to go with both hands folded to Iran and with the advocacy groups inside United States. Now, what does Iran do? Iran says, now you, United States, have to work to my terms because you are coming to me if you want that specific accord. That's what, unfortunately, is going on. Few nations in Europe are proponents of this approach of approachment with Iran. Clearly, Israel has been stating the obvious that you do not negotiate unless the enrichment is stopped by the Iran. Thus far, while this bickering goes on, the enrichment continues in the Iranians' centrifuges.
And GOP senators helped to fast track the Democrats' debt limit hike with social welfare spending in place. Sridharji, this debt limit, it's a joke. It's really a joke because US is spending like it's got there is no tomorrow. I mean, they are burdening the next generation and the one after that and so on, with no care for how all these debts are going to be paid. I mean, people have stopped even talking about repaying the debt or balancing the books, if you will. If you are going to be so blasé about it, why even have this artificial game, sir?
Well, there are two things. I think that I endorse and agree with your sentiments, which is if you borrow, there is no tomorrow, or you borrow because tomorrow you are not alive, then you can borrow because you are not alive tomorrow, right? So somebody else's problem it is having borrowed above your head. So why do we have, this safety net? The safety net is expected that common sense will prevail, that there will be people from across the aisle working together. And when genuine issues are presented around the size of the debt and the interest burden that it places on the revenue side by virtue of the expense, then some sanity will prevail and normalization will occur, because you can only have charity when there is liquidity. You cannot have charity when you have no liquidity and debt is the only option. That is the reason why they have this trigger where Senate and the House has to approve the passage of the bill for lifting the limit so that the expenditure incurred or committed in the past, which needs to be met, will be met by the US government.
And the court orders Trump to hand over documents to Jan 6th committee. Sridharji, this committee doesn't seem to have the right GOP members in its group. Do you think Trump is going to comply, or is he also going to take a stance like what What's the other guy did?
Steve Bannon.
Yeah, Steve
Steve
Bannon
Bannon.
did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Contempt of court. He didn't appear, and then they filed contempt of court.
Yes.
And he's getting relief. As far as Trump is concerned, he said there's nothing in the documents. He's not prepared to submit the documents. He may eventually turn out and put the documents up, and these fellows may make their own subjective judgment out of it. What will it boil down to is, my apologies, what will it boil down to is that whether there is any locus standi on the enforcement on the outcomes, and whether the evidence based on those documents that the House committee has seen can fit within a legal framework. So there's more issues. Right now, what you're witnessing is political grandstanding.
And Biden looks like has had a few losses in the courts. He could not enforce the mandatory vaccine on a private employer, and he's also suffers a defeat in the Senate. Which was the thing that he lost in Senate, Sridharji?
He lost the same one. I think he wanted to. It was challenged in the courts, but then you bring it to the legislative agenda, and if you pass through a legislative process, then it becomes easier to implement rather than be challenged in the courts, because earlier order was executive order, which was challenged. Is the same, which is mandating the private employers to make their employees comply with vaccination. If it is not, then they'll not be allowed to work, and they could even face termination. That is what.
And I'm sorry, sir. Please continue. Please finish your thought.
Yeah, that is what Senate is saying, not acceptable.
And France and United Kingdom skirmishes continue as fishing-related issues flare up and France threatens legal action. We must remember that France is coming out on the short end of the stick because of the AUKUS deal, AUKUS deal, wherein nuclear submarines, which were supposed to have been supplied by France, is now being instead supplied by the United States. Sridharji, what do you make of this? Is this storm in a teacup, or is it something bigger than that?
No, I think Macron is going on about this fishing trawlers crossing and fishing trawlers crossing. Well, this is a lingering issue that has been there for some time, but he's using the occasion to get the maximum mile out of it. He's basically saying, you, Britain, you are not in EU, and so therefore we will use the EU legislation for trespassing into our boundaries, and will enforce it with punitive measures. This is Macron's position, because they're double whammy. One, Britain chose to exit. Second, the one that you mentioned, the AUKUS deal.
And Biden promises all support to protect its sovereignty and says the decision to join NATO membership is in its hands. Biden also pledges more military support for Central Europe. So I can see that the US is now beginning to cast its glance wider. It thinks that if Russia does not succeed in Ukraine, Putin might start looking at other countries. Most of these countries don't really have armies that can stand up to Russia, I suppose, Sridharji?
I think, Sree, I don't know whether we covered in one of the joint sessions or in that solo session. There is currently pending before the Senate a U.S. Armed Services Amendment budgetary bill, which has been hanging loose. But the Democrats are going after the budget and trying to put cuts on the existing budget. And most of the money that is in that budget is a reflection of US footprint in various parts of the world and the cost to the exchequer. So you're going to cut the US budget, defense budget, and now you're promising more footprint and more support in Central Europe and Central Asia and other parts of the world. It just doesn't add up. This just looks like another political state from Mr. Biden, which sounds good, which looks good, which happens to feel good. Whether he can execute on that remains a very big question mark, Sree.
Sridharji, for the 2022 elections, I can tell you that flip-flop, confused, are all the words that are going to be used to characterize this Biden presidency, which is very unfortunate. At least in your opinion, I think, and in my opinion, he's a good man, but somewhere he seems to have lost his way.
Well, I think so. I think you have, again, I will be the salesperson for Sree Ayarji's book. Very soon it will be in Amazon. Please buy the book about what happened in 2020 elections. So we will have the reenactment of the 2022 drama. We only hope that a better outcome is accomplished rather than what we got in 2020. It's just not one issue. We are not covering the other side at all, which is around the crime that is pervading across United States. So you have no enforcement in the borders because there's no money. You have no enforcement within borders because there's no money. You're now going to cut the budget of the armed services, a vast chunk of it, as one would call it, as business as usual, for troops deployed to protect the status quo and harmony around the world, and most important of which is in Europe. And United States had committed significant footprint in South China Sea. There also we have seen a bit of tapering. And now Mr. Biden says he's going to accommodate all of this. So if it is not a flip-flop, I don't know what it is, because the flip-flop has been the consistent theme of Mr. Biden, not just on one policy matter, but broadly across all policy matters.
Macron also calls for EU emergency measures or emergency response systems to control its borders. Sridharji, is this the fallout of the Belarus issue, sir?
It is to some extent. It is a fallout of the Belarus. It is also a fallout of the policies that they had no choice but to support of Angela Merkel. What was called as Arab Spring and refugee crisis at that point of time. It opened the floodgates. Unbridled, people came in, and Europe is facing significant issues as a result of that. And now you got porous borders. You got people coming in through Mediterranean, which is Morocco, Italy, and Spain. But more recently, the flow has increased because of the Belarus strategy, or the strategy adopted by Belarus. Europe has no immediate, what you call as the emergency response strategy for many of these issues. And albeit being too late, Mr. Macron is saying, what's a strategy? Remember, Poland and Lithuania had also raised the same issues around, in case there are aggressive postures by either Belarus or by Russia, what is our response? We can't be calling United States all the time. We need to be capable of acting. So we don't have a strategy. I think he's beginning to, Europe, not we, has a strategy. And this is what he's trying to alert.
And UK, Australia, and Canada, and many other nations are likely to join Biden's diplomatic boycott of Winter Olympics. China responds saying that there will be consequences. Japan feels left out. Should all G7 join the boycott? Sridharji, rid me this doubt. What exactly is a diplomatic boycott?
Diplomatic boycott is effectively means that there will be no representatives. There will be no official representatives from US Olympic Committee and others. There'll be no diplomats, dignitaries attending. There will not be any country political heads be at the function. Opening ceremony is a very big stuff for Olympics. Closing ceremony is a very big stuff. So from a ceremonial and diplomacy point of view, many world leaders and diplomats will be present at these events. So they will not be at these events. And almost all of the G7 nations have acceded to Biden. I'm sure that the European nations will follow suit. The Anglo-Saxon nations such as United Kingdom, Britain, United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Yes, have and New Zealand have agreed, are siding with United States. So what Japan says is, well, I'm in Asia. I live with these people. I'm part of ASEAN, broader ASEAN. Am I going to deal with this issue, in a very diplomatic manner? So I think that what Japan is saying is that there needs to be a much better coordinated strategy. Otherwise, it will find itself isolated in a region where China is an integral part of what happens.
Sridaji, as a follow-up, I hope the judges that would be appointed for various events that happen to be from these countries still go there. Otherwise, it will be a complete farce, sir.
I have a feeling we are looking down the barrel of a complete boycott. We're not too far from it. And actually, many pundits believe that's the right thing that the world must do, because only then China will get the message. Anything else other than that, there is no message that is going to reach. The best way to tell China that it is not part of the world order and it is not in complete compliance with the world order is a boycott, which sends a clear message, not this little piddly diplomatic boycott.
And Nicaragua breaks ties with Taiwan and joins hands with China. So now you're seeing some of the blowback because of, remember what we had been telling about Lithuania recognizing, in a different way than the official recognition of Taiwan and so on and so forth, Sridharji?
Yes, I think you are absolutely correct. What we are witnessing is a very fascinating strategy that China is adopting. The strategy that the China is adopting here is, let me handpick nation by nation which has proximity to Taiwan. Let me see how many nations I can break the back, so they in turn respond with breaking their ties with Taiwan and joining me. So it's not just purely daily incursions into the air intrusion defense zone of Taiwan, but it is incursions into the bilateral relationships that Taiwan has enjoyed with several nations, and see to what extent he can start cutting those relationships using this diplomatic channel, using these diplomatic methods that he's currently embarking on. Not a very positive sign, Shriji.
And thank you, sir. And let's take a quick look at markets. Markets are flat ahead of key inflation data numbers that will be coming later today. And the Treasury surges past 1.51%. And oil is back in the $72 to $76 range. And cryptocurrencies are taking a hit. And Siddharji, before I hand off the control to you, I want all our viewers to know that at 9 p.m., Professor R. Vaidyanathan and I will be talking about cryptocurrencies in some detail. So do join in for that also. Sridharji, over to you.
Well, firstly, markets had a good run, and markets ran into the difficulties with inflation data and the consumer price index, purchasing price index. So we're going to see the Fed inflation data that is coming out today, and we're beginning to see some early signals that Fed may need to give much closer attention. And the rates went below 1.4, now either back above 1.5. Usually that's also reflected in the energy prices. We are now in the oil and Brent in the 72 to 76 category. So that is, that's what is the headline. Inflation and the bond tapering are the two main areas which is of concern on the future. As I say again, will finish very well in 2021. With regard to crypto, I think we are also going to have a session. So to me, crypto is basically here. Now, whether it is mainstream or off-stream, remains to be seen. And crypto is taking a hit for two reasons. One is that there is some readjustments that are taking place around the ecosystem, and you are seeing cash flowing in. And crypto is, to some extent, is also tied to liquidity around what happens in the equity markets. So both these are combining in terms of the deflated prices that one is seeing on the crypto. But everybody is still gung-ho that the price is going to go forward sooner than later.
Thank you very much, Sridharji. And that brings us to a close of today's episode of DGI. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel, both on Facebook and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow, bright and as usual, at 6:30 p.m. IST. Namaskar, and see you tomorrow.
Namaskar. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Sorry, I just had a little bit of, yarns and things today. So my apologies for that. A little bit of stress. But other than that, I think have a wonderful evening. And, another exciting day is ahead of us.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar.